Hi and welcome everyone to our Game Starter event, Game Starter Technical Artist. I'm Anna from Gamecity Hamburg, your host today, and we want to talk about the job profile of technical artists. Game Starter is an online event where three industrial experts tell us about their jobs, how they got into the industry, in the games industry, and what they learned so far, and how your career can start maybe in the field of technical artist as well. And before we start, I just want to give you some head up to some events that are coming up in Hamburg from the games industry in Hamburg, from Gamecity Hamburg ourselves. So first, for everyone who's interested in getting to know the indie dev scene in Hamburg, please welcome the Hamburg Indie Treff. It's a meetup that's regularly for the indie game scene in Hamburg. There will be some talks, and there will be some game stations where there will be games showcased, and of course networking. So if you want to meet people from the industry who are starting out or who have started out, who have known the industry so far, so please join. It's a really great event to mingle and to get to know people you haven't met before or you have met before. So it's a really nice event to get your career started or just join a really nice community. This is on July 28th in next week, next Friday. So it will be at the SAE Institute in the bunker. You will get the details in the chat. Next on the agenda is from us. Gamecity Hamburg will invite all people who identify as flinter, female, lesbian, intersex, non-binary, trans, and agender for a first meetup from people from the games industry. It will be a picnic if the weather plays fine with us. So come join us and start the conversation. We want to talk about what's going on in our lives and in our industry for us. So please join and feel free to visit us on August 3rd. And everyone knows that the Gamescom is coming up. And if you're in Cologne at the Gamescom, we will present 5 cool Hamburg teams from the games industry with their games at the Indie Arena booth. You will get to play really cool games from Hamburg, so don't miss the chance to visit us. And of course, Gamecity Hamburg will be there to answer your questions. So if you want to meet up with us, just give us a shout and a call and a mail, wherever you can find us. So yeah, there are a lot of summer events coming up. But we are not here for the summer events. We are here for Game Starter. And this is a really nice event to just chat about the job. I gave you a small introduction, and then we will talk about all the job profile technical artist. I will introduce the panelists in a few moments, and afterwards there will be a Q&A round, but you can ask questions anytime via the chat. We will notice the questions, so feel free to shoot some questions that you have on your mind. We will try to answer as many as possible, but don't worry, we will get to that later. So don't be shy, just type what you want to know about the job profile. And at 7:30 we want to end the event, so be quick with your questions. Now, we have a lot of time. And now it's time to introduce our panel. We are so happy to have them here. We have Süleyman Süzen from Sunday, Aleksandra Rutkowska from Bytro, and Marvin Wärzner from Fishlabs, who are all technical artists, but they have different profiles. They work in different fields, so it will be a really great time to discuss this. So after a few moments, you will have a chance to introduce yourself. And yeah, that's for the panel. And now I will head over to our panelist. So Aleksandra, maybe you can start with what you do, where you come from, where you work at, and how you came into the industry. Maybe give us a quick roundabout who you are.
All right. So hello, my name is Aleksandra Rutkowska, as you might know already. I work for Bytro as a senior technical artist. but I'm an architecture alumni, so it's a kind of weird that I ended up in IT. But I always wanted to make games, and I learned how to do 3D in uni. So this is how I started doing courses on YouTube and whatnot. And I got into internship at CD Projekt Red for a 3D artist, and I was at first a 3D artist, but then I also learned rigging, so I became a technical artist, and now I do shaders mostly and tools and GPU optimizations. So that's me.
Thanks so much. Can you tell us what you are working right now, or is it too much to ask?
That's too much to ask. I can't
Okay.
answer that
Okay,
question.
no
I work
problem.
for Bytro.
Okay, if you work for Bytro, that's great. Süleyman, do you want to continue this story? How you came
Hi.
into this job?
Hi, I'm Süleyman. I work at Sunday as senior technical game artist. I joined industry like 6 years ago. Yeah. What else I can talk about? Kinda stuck there.
Yeah, no worries. Do you work as a technical artist from the start?
Yeah.
Or did you?
Yeah. First, my title was game artist. Then I got into technical stuff more and more over time because when you're artist, you just provide some tools to developers, some assets to the developers, and they implement to the game. So what technical artist does is like going more into the game engine and making sure that everything is implemented properly. So when you want to reach some stuff as an art, you have to go more technical to make sure that it's implemented properly. That's why I went to the technical side more and more.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, we will
Thank
go
you.
into detail later. And Marvin, maybe you
course.
can tell us more about yourself.
Of course.
Sure. Hi, hi everyone. My name is Marvin Wärzner. I'm from Germany, pretty much a German potato, as we like to say here. And yeah, I got into games and game development through modding, basically. I remember very vividly that when The Sims 2 was a thing, there was a TV with a cable that annoyed me, so I wanted to get rid of the cable. And that's how I started looking into the software and stuff to learn it. And then 9 years ago, roughly, I started working as a freelance 3D artist, doing everything in the pipeline from rigging, animation to modeling, shading and stuff. And then quickly transitioned into more and more of the technical side, starting with coding, looking into shaders and playing around with different engines. And yeah, I did that for quite a while. And so 10 months ago, then I joined Fishlabs, where I now work as a technical artist on making awesome games. Glad to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. And now I will give over to my lovely colleague Amanda, who I didn't introduce before. I'm so sorry, because she will be hosting the event with me today. Now we want to talk more about what your job entails. So thank you for answering.
So Süleyman already mentioned a bit of what technical art means and what kind of work it entails. Can you elaborate on that? Like, what is that job and what do you have to do in that job?
Yeah, so like technical artist, as the name mentions, you go into the more technical stuff. Unlike the other game artist roles, it means that you work on implementation, every kind of aspects. Like it's of course depends on the company. Every company has different descriptions of technical artist job titles, but mostly it means that you get to make sure that all the necessary shaders works properly, or animation implementations, or any kind of effects and stuff. So like as the name of course like mentions, all kind of technical stuff, all kind of art presentation in the game you are responsible of.
Aleksandra, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, there's I always say that there's two types of technical artists, the ones with capital T and the ones with capital A. And that's the things for you to like figure out. Like you can be more artistic and do more with graphics, with shaders, maybe with proceduralism, like making game art, but the art that requires you to know technical details. It could be like very technical and make tools for artists and optimize pipelines, create pipelines, automate the boring stuff, because that's also what we do. We're lazy people. If you have to do something repeatedly, you just write a script for it. That's how it works. So I would say there's that, but also there is a part of technical art that now is called technical animation, but it didn't used to be this way. So it's rigging, so preparing characters for animation, so making them be able to move, like a rigger. So like you would put like strings into a puppet. That's kind of a job, but now it's a technical animator really these days.
Marvin, would you consider yourself the big T or the big A?
I'm the big A.
For me, it has been for quite a while that I was more of the big A, because I actually started in traditional art, but then more and more transitioned into the big T, and now I would say I'm definitely more on the technical side. One thing that I really think about is important with technical art is that it kind of provides the bridge between art and programming, especially between the art and programming teams. So we also are responsible for taking care of the communication, making sure that if the programmers speak in their magic programmer speech, then artists can also can understand that. And so we often provide the translation layer between that. And then other than that, of course, it always depends a little bit if you specialize. But me, for example, I always have been a generalist, and I pretty much continue to do that because I'm always interested in all the aspects of getting to make a game. And this is something that is really important and special about this job as well, is that you can really touch almost every aspect of the game.
So Marvin is a generalist. Aleksandra is a big A, as I understood it. And Süleyman, what about you?
I guess
What's your
I'm bit of everything, because most of the time when we start a game project, I want to have control of the every aspect of the game, because as an artist, all the visual stuff you are responsible of, and my title makes sure that I give all the necessary feedbacks and visualization. I provide all of them to the players properly. So it's like a bit of everything: animation, rigging, effects, feedbacks, and general scene and characters and stuff.
So Aleksandra, could you again maybe elaborate on the difference between technical artist and then a 2D or 3D artist?
So 2D and 3D artists are working usually just providing assets. So that would be concept artists, so it would be 2D artists or like UI artists, and 3D artists, they would make characters or assets for the game, like props. And the technical artists would usually check those assets. Are they, especially the 3D ones, are they correct poly count? Are they using correct shaders? Is the textures big or small enough? Are the scripts proper components attached to the game object? Because the model is one thing, but it's all things. Other stuff, for example, see for rigging if it has a correct topology, stuff like this. And we would also, technical artists would probably use the 3D art that's provided by artists, and use it in like procedural generation, for example, to scatter rocks or create a forest or whatnot. The bigger your game, the more of that is being used. So I would say that's the difference.
Would Süleyman or Marvin have anything to add to that?
I can say something like, most of the time how it works without a technical artist, 2D or 3D artists provide the game assets, as Aleksandra mentioned, but it's up to developer to implement these to the game. And most of the time, developer implements those and like shows the artist how is it looking, and artist says, oh no, it should be like that and stuff. But when you have the technical artist, at least in my title, I do those implementations, and as an also a person with the perspective of an artist, I can say, yeah, this looks good and it's implemented very well as I want.
Yeah, one other aspect that I find is very important for game development is performance, of course, and not just performance for the final game, but also when it comes to developing the game. You don't want to have a tool when you click here and then click there and it takes 10 minutes to actually do something, because you lose a lot of time then, which is unfortunate. So technical artists are very important to have on the team, just to make sure that it runs well when creating the game, but also make sure that when the final game then comes out, everything runs smoothly.
Cool. So you already mentioned working together with developers and with artists. Are there any other departments with which you work closely, Süleyman?
Actually, at Sunday, I almost work with all the departments, because everyone got to say when it comes to the data side of the game. Because when I say to the people, so I work in gaming industry and we make games, it's not about only developing the game, but also like marketing and, you know, selling the stuff and optimizing on the both marketing side and the performance side. So like when you work with the people who been in the industry for a long time, you usually like share, those people share their thoughts with you and to evaluate the game itself. So yeah, almost everyone has a word to say.
Marvin, is that the same for you?
Yes, actually. There is not one department that I do not talk to, and then from there it only depends on how big the tasks are that we're working on, of how much time I spend with people. For example, I focus a lot on animation tasks, like setting up animation systems for the player to move and such things. So I work a lot together with animators, but at the same time I create shaders for the environment. So I work with the environment team, and then on other days, since I am a lot into scripting as well, I help out the core gameplay team on creating gameplay logic. So yeah, it really is a very very fun day working in tech art, because you always end up working with many different people.
Aleksandra, I assume it's the same for you. You also work with all the departments?
I would say so, yeah. Starting with marketing all the way to QA. So like sometimes you just provide tools, especially if you don't have like tools programmers on your team, then you provide tools to like all departments. So for example, marketing needs something because they need to do this, and that, and okay, now we're writing this, right? And all of that. So I would say, yeah, definitely across all departments.
So you mentioned all kinds of tasks. Is there a typical workflow in technical art? Like, does it differ from different companies or team sizes? Aleksandra, I see you nodding.
Yeah, it definitely does differ, and it also differ from from the team sizes, but also from the stage of production. You'll do different things when you're in pre-production. You'll do very different things when you're like just out the door. You're just almost sending, the stuff to certificates for Sony and everything. You'll be doing different things. So it really depends. And if you look at technical artist jobs descriptions, you will never find the same one. Because for each studio they will look totally different. So yeah, it all depends.
Is that the same for you, Süleyman?
Yeah, pretty the same, but also it really depends on the project, because with every project we need different tools, different shaders. So in some projects we have tons of people, like tons of 3D people in the game. So we have to watch out for performance, and we try to find some performance animation tools to reduce the cost of animation. In some projects we have a liquid shader, so we have to work on that. And it really depends on what kind of challenge we have that I need to spend my time most on it.
Marvin, you're also a generalist. I guess it's the same for you.
Yeah, pretty much. One thing that I always like to think of, which is a general workflow for tech artists that revolves around every task, I would say, is we are basically problem solvers. So we first look at the problem and then identify what would be the best solution, how to go about it to solve it. In some cases, this might be that the artists have a very hard time creating dressing for the scene, and so you create a tool to make that faster. And other times it's just that a shader is causing problems in the game, and so you have to adjust it. It's pretty much a problem-solving job, and this is what I like about it so much.
Yeah, it sounds like it never gets boring. But you also mentioned tools. What tools do you mostly work with, Marvin?
In terms of software, it is the big 3D programs. Maya was a huge part of my life, but I some time ago joined the Blender team. Go Blender. And I yeah, and this is basically the big 3D packages, but there's also Max, which I touched on, and Cinema 4D. So all tools are valid to some degree. Maya is still the biggest one, of course. And then apart from that, there are other tools that you use in the 3D creation process. For example, Substance Painter to create textures for your objects, or if you are like technical artists, a little bit more on the technical side, there would be stuff like Substance Designer, where you actually design procedural graphs for texture creation. And then even further than that, on the more technical side, we would use programs like Visual Studio to write more C++-based code, and then also Visual Code, for example, to write more in Python. So there's even different programs for different languages and so on.
I saw your thumbs going up at Blender, Aleksandra. Are there different tools you use, or did Marvin cover everything that you also use?
I also use Houdini, but with the Blender, the geometry nodes, I can do all of that with geometry nodes now, and I don't have to pay for license. So there we go. But yeah, it's pretty similar. And then, of course, an engine. Like sometimes you're working with proprietary engine, like in-house engine, and sometimes you work with something broadly used like Unity or Unreal Engine. And usually stuff is easier when you do that. Yeah.
Süleyman, I see you nodding. Is that the same? Do you have any other tool to add?
Yeah, pretty much the same. I don't have anything to add, but most of my time I spend on Unity optimizing some stuff, or like any tools. Like I use tools from Asset Store. So with every project, as I mentioned, I use different tools that other creators provided, because sometimes you don't reinvent the wheel. And when you're a company, you work very fast on the games. Most of the time we have to save some time. So it's very good to have some base library that does some jobs that you need to do.
Yeah, one thing that I maybe can say in general is that it always makes sense to have a good understanding of one game engine or another, and the biggest ones being, of course, Unity and Unreal. I've, for example, spent 10 years working with Unreal now, and I learned so much about in this engine what applies to other engines as well. And this is one of the, if I think about game development, one of the programs you definitely spend the most time as a technical artist.
So now up for my favorite questions, question that I always ask in a game starter. What was your most unusual or surprising task in technical art so far, Süleyman?
Interesting. That's I never thought about. I guess all of my tasks are unusual, because sometimes we get to simulate some iron melting stuff. Sometimes we get to simulate cutting shaders or something, like ironing clothes. So every project comes with its own challenge. And it's the fun part, because with every project, when you have a new challenge, you constantly learn stuff, and it keeps you updated with the sector, and it keeps the work fun.
Cool. Aleksandra, what was your most, do you have a unusual, surprising task?
Maybe not a task, but a bug. I got a bug that said that back on the Vision 2 that the screen on a laptop, like the wallpaper on a laptop, was too cheerful for the faction that was using the laptop. So, yeah.
That's a good one. Marvin, how about you?
Oh, there's lots of tiny tasks that I enjoy. One reason why I especially like to work with animation and animation setups is that you have the most fun with it when things don't go right. So your character tries to start running but walks backwards for some reason, or his head turns 180 degrees, and you are very surprised to see that he has some sort of exorcist-like qualities to him. And yeah, with animation, there's always a lot of fun to be had.
Well, thank you. So my last question before I give the mic over to Anna is, what questions do you have to keep in mind and ask yourself regularly while working? Aleksandra.
Why? Always. Why doesn't it work? But it's also like, why should it work? So yeah, that's my favorite question, definitely.
Marvin, how about you?
Yeah, I completely agree. Like the most important question is why, and then whenever I work with other people, the biggest question that I always ask is, what are you trying to do? Because it is very important. Because sometimes, for example, they have very different understanding of what actually goes into creating a tool. For example, if they, I'd say in the level, want to count the number of trees, then they think of a very complex way to do that, and then you come up with a script that does it in like one click. And so these are always the things why I ask, what are you trying to do? Because then I can get a simple idea in my head about it.
Süleyman, what do you have, and what questions do you need to have in mind? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Most of the time when my program crashes, I ask myself, did I save it?
Oh,
did I save the project? And like I lost 7 hours of work. So like I recommend everyone just to like Command S or Control S all the time. Like maybe, I don't know, create a program that does it automatically every 10 seconds or something. And let's get serious. The second serious question that I ask to myself is, when I do some art or like any tool, I say, yeah, this looks good. I like it. But then I have to ask myself, is it going to perform good? Like, is it going to perform good in the market? Because sometimes you can like something based on art, but you never know the player's answer without testing it with the data. You have to get data. If you don't have the previous data, there's no way to tell that this will be good for your game. So like make sure that test all the time, get data, and ready to remove the feature from the game if it's not liked by the user. In the end, you're trying to make money out of that game.
Right. Thank you. So now I give Anna the mic for the next questions about ideal career starters.
Yeah, thanks so much for giving us some great insights so far. Because it's a game starter, we want to know your opinion how to start in the career as technical artist. And maybe Marvin, you can start with your experience and opinion. What is a formal education that a technical artist needs? Is there anything in your experience or in your opinion that it's needed as a basic education?
I mean, it certainly depends. I would say it's always important to have good foundational knowledge in stuff like mathematics, because a lot of the stuff that you will be doing has at least something to do with mathematics. So you have to, I was the same person, basically. I always was afraid of math and ran away from it. But then at some point I noticed, there's actually some really fun things you can do with it. So this is one area that I would really focus on. And then I studied digital media personally. So it was a combination of media design and media informatics. So I got a little bit of both the more artistical stuff that I could learn, and then also the technical stuff like programming at least to a certain degree, and also how to handle data and stuff like that. So it is certainly worth it to go the route of going with a university course and focusing on the more scary topics like math and physics, maybe just because they can help you later on. But I also want to stress that I think it is not required to have a university degree. It's just about being disciplined, and especially about really having the drive to learn, because then you can do it on your own as well, because there's a lot of knowledge out there everywhere. And this is, I have to admit, this is how I learned most of my things that I know today, is just by trying and by watching videos on the internet. So.
Yay for the internet. Yeah, that's a great way to say it. And Aleksandra, you did a route yourself. So what's your opinion there? What did help, or what education do you think is a bonus or is something that can lead the way to technical artists?
Yeah, definitely mathematics, especially if you're doing shaders, proceduralism. That's like basically vector math, Cartesian math. There's this book that's called Essential Mathematics for Games and Interactive Applications. That's basically that we have to know. But I had vector math in uni because I had building mechanics kind of things. So that's how it worked for me. But also there's another book, the real-time rendering, the latest edition, that's also gonna tell you like how the rendering works, because you may not necessarily know how the CPU processing works, but you need to know how the GPU processing works. So you need to know what the draw call is, you need to know what's the poly count, what's the try count, why is the difference, but why does it matter? And so on and so forth. And what's the rendering order? What's deferred? What's forward? What's the difference? What makes a difference? Why should you choose one or the other? It's definitely something you should know. So definitely something like computer science course would help, and not necessarily a degree, but like a course in that. There are some free options around on the internet, so definitely would recommend that. For at least education part, and of course like just learning stuff from the internet, just do tutorials, just start, and then you just keep driving and driving and driving, and then the math will help you reading like scientific papers, which you will at some point, because you will try to find, like, you have a complex problem, gonna read papers about like some complex algorithm, and there's math notations, so you need to know how to read them, right? So yeah.
These are some really great tips and insight. Thank you, Aleksandra. Süleyman, do you have something to add in your experience? What helped and what education-wise or course-wise would be helpful additionally?
So education-wise, I was graduated from cartoon animation. So what I recommend for the newbies is, aside from the mathematics stuff, which like not my strong part, so I focus on my other stronger parts, like getting to know the engine you work with, getting more the technical details of the engine, and also aside from that, having a basic knowledge of 3D, 2D art creation, basic knowledge of animation principles, and the color theory is something that will definitely help you decide on other parts. Of course, like when we talk about the mathematics and stuff in the end, you create visual stuff with those. So you have to develop your art side with it, so it can just evaluate each other all together. Both of them are very essential.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. There was a question in the chat for traditional artists who want to work around to go into the technical aspects more. You already mentioned some tips. Are there some beginner things you would say can help if you come from the traditional artist side? Marvin, maybe you can say something about that.
Certainly. I mean, I come from traditional art. I started with like making money by drawing portraits and stuff like that. So it is quite a change, and I would say the easiest way to get into technical art would be to go over the path of 3D art. So since you already enjoy creating art, just try and get onto the PC, download Blender, which is free, and just explore a bit and play around, so you actually get into that 3D space, which is the first step in getting to this more technical side, because you have to really understand the 3D aspect of it. And then from there, if you just say, okay, what is a thing I want to create? You just think about a little model, and then you go ahead and create this little model. And then once you are a little bit more comfortable with working in 3D, you then could do the next step, which for example, I would do is downloading Unreal Engine and then starting to set yourself little goals, which would be making a character move, for example. And then you can try to play with the engine, look at some videos, and then you eventually figure that out. And then you can do the next step, which is maybe I want the player to shoot. So you figure out how the player could shoot. And then this would give you then in this instance an understanding of what is actually required to get these things to work. And from there, you can then spread out into the more technical bits. What is a shader? How do I apply a material to an object? How do I change the material at runtime? And then from there, you have basically infinite possibilities. And the important thing is that to be not slain by the huge amount of stuff that is available, just set yourself little small goals that are actually achievable, and then go one step at a time. This is how I did it, and it was very fun for me. So it really helps to just have an interest in creating anything basically, and creating games is even more fun, because then you can try simple, of course. Don't just say, okay, I want to create the next big MMO, because that will not work because you're one person. So take a small piece and then just achieve that, and you can go from there.
Oh, thanks. That was a great workaround with some things to remember. Aleksandra, do you have something to add? You nodded quite a lot about that. What as a when you come from non-technical artist path, what can you add to Marvin's story?
Yeah, you'll just definitely have interest in that technical stuff, because if it's you just have to see if it works for you, because if you're just gonna get frustrated with it, it's just not gonna work out for you. And I always say that for good technical artists, it takes more of a personality trait than skills. Like you have to be like, oh, it doesn't work, let's figure it out. Like you have to be very open to fail, and be very curious, and always ask how was it done. And if you work in the office, you can just always go to someone else's desk and, hey, how did you do that? And this is how I learned stuff, for example. And just be always curious and always ask questions, and because people always love to talk about their work, so they will never shy you away if you ask them questions. So
yeah, that's a great tip. That's one of the questions we already had, like what soft skills should you have, or what should you try to accomplish as a career starter? Süleyman, maybe you can add to that what Aleksandra said about not only the educational aspect and the interest in math and art, but what more can you need to be part of a team as a technical artist? What is relevant?
Can you open the question more? Like, what do we mean with the soft skill exactly?
To be like being curious, or being very good at communications, because we talked in other game starters about game programming, and that was one of the most communicative job ever. So is it something technical artists should be as well, communicative, curious, or is there some special skills you noticed that you have that can help?
Exactly. The first thing, you should be able to up for challenges, because there will be a lot. And the most important thing is ability to search something in the internet and like dig deep down, because half of your work will be in Google, how to solve this, how to learn this, and you will be constantly learning stuff. So it's very important and essential to search for stuff and dig it down. Yeah, pretty much that.
Being a detective, Marvin is nodding as the
Exactly.
technical artist is the detective of the company.
Yeah, pretty much. One thing that I maybe can quickly add is that there's a mindset that I think is really important being a technical artist, and that is being lazy while also not being lazy. And there's an important reason for that, because being lazy sometimes helps you figure out how to get around work. Because of course you can place 1,000 trees by hand and it will take days. But if you're lazy, you might come up with the idea of, maybe I can find a way to make this faster. I don't want to work this hard to place these trees. And so you come up with a script that can do it by automatically placing the trees wherever the grass is or something like that. So it is really important to be disciplined and actually put in the work, but at the same time, you have to think about the way where you can easily or more easily solve problems, not just for you, but also for others. And so this is what I call the Schrödinger's cat of being lazy, basically, having two of the states at once.
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, I think there are some helpful skills. And Aleksandra, you already mentioned some great recommendations for people who want to start in technical artists. Are there some other places you can go, or some tutorials you said were helpful, or as everyone said, Google it. It's the first step of becoming technical artist, finding the right way to find out what is needed.
Yeah, definitely Googling helps. There's my partner is also a technical artist, and he finished a school in Belgium at Kortrijk as a DEA, I think, and that was solely about games creation. So we basically will go for on each stage of making a game. So you'll do some 2D art, 3D art, you do some rigging, some animation, do some programming, just go through all the creation of the game, and then you can nitpick and see, okay, what do I like the most? And then you can go specialize it and apply for a job and work in that field. But definitely just try things, because like I remembered that when I first started doing 3D for architecture, I was like, oh, the materials is the best part. It's like when it's all taking shape and colors, the materials, all the nodes, this is the best. And this is what I do for a living right now. I just create shaders, which is basically like materials in 3ds Max and V-Ray. So yeah, I'll try that.
Great, thanks so much for the recommendations. I have a question from the chat that popped up that I didn't even think about, is the portfolio as a technical artist. What should you add into a portfolio in the early stages, maybe when you are not that far ahead? Are there some tips that you can give to our career starters? Süleyman, you nodded. Marvin, you can start. It's okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think that is actually a very good question, because it's, in my opinion, super important. Because as nice as we want to think the world is, if you apply for a position, the first thing most people look at is a quick look over your application and then your portfolio, because they want to know what you actually do. So it is really important to have a portfolio that immediately strikes us as being competent. And if you go fresh out from university and you finish the course, maybe you might be so lucky that your program already produced some really nice art that you can put in there, where I will say only put in the best stuff. But it's really important to document your process, basically, because for technical art, it's always important how you did something and not just the end result. So just don't put in the pretty pictures of the end result, but put in all the pictures and maybe some videos documenting how you achieved this, because this is really important to us. And another thing that I think should be in every portfolio is some personal work. This is quite important because, of course, there are school programs that teach you specific stuff, but most of the time there is already a set result that is expected. And we can most of the time tell if something is from a program. So I'm always really happy to see in new portfolios some personal work that really shows that you're interested in the field and that you are taking your own time to coming up with solutions to problems.
Well, great tips. And Süleyman, do you have anything to add for a good portfolio?
Yeah, what I recommend is like if you don't have anything in your portfolio related to technical art, I do recommend creating some projects and dedicating your time to it and creating some basic results and getting all of them under a single video demo reel. We call it. It's best way to present your art in a very short time, and if you do it properly, you can impress the employers. So it's important, just like, and also you can start a big project, but divide into, and like not divide into, but divide in like small tasks. And in the YouTube, you can find all the answers from different tasks and different questions. And most of the time, like they are very self-explanatory and like very simple to do if you just follow the steps. And at some point, you can just you will have some stuff just to add it to your portfolio.
That's some great tips. Aleksandra, do you have anything to add, or is everything covered from your opinion for a portfolio, or what in your experience could help?
So for portfolio, also like don't go for like too many things, especially if you like you enjoy certain things, and if you just enjoy shaders, just show us like amazing substance designer, let's say, or like super fun fire effects or whatever. But you probably don't need to show us 3D art and like 2D and whatever. But that's up to you. But definitely just choose your best stuff and don't go for a quantity, go for quality. What a good thing is to see an ArtStation profile, because it shows like how you progress through the years as well. So that's also shows like a lot about yourself, like and how far did you go and what is your interest, right? So, and also I would say as a starter, don't be afraid to just copy things, to just go and I'm gonna recreate this effect from like PS3 gen game. There's nothing wrong about this. It's like when you try starting learning drawing, you start with tracing lines of someone else's drawings, kind of the same. And that's perfectly fine for a portfolio to have something like this.
Yeah, thanks so much. I will head over the mic now to Amanda for some more tips from your perspective on working as a technical artist. So thanks for giving us the tips. And there are some questions in the chat. We will try to answer them later. No worries. Now for some more tips from you.
Based on your experience, is there a common mistake or misconception about the industry or about technical art in particular you often encounter in career starters? Marvin.
That's a very good question, because there's a lot that can go wrong, I would say. But it's for me, it's just not having the determination, which is what really makes it problematic to really get into the technical art field, because you have to put in the time to not only focus on one specific topic, but you really have to have a little bit of a broader understanding of at least the whole game pipeline, because even if you specialize, you will be confronted with issues that are maybe not quite related to your field. So it is best that you have some knowledge there as well. Yeah, it can be really difficult to get into that mindset of, hey, I need to work on this. And one thing that maybe helps is just putting 1 or 2 hours in each day to get just sit down and start creating something. And once you actually get something going, it will become easier and easier to start working on that. And the good thing is, if you work on your personal stuff, you can also then later on use it in your portfolio as well.
Aleksandra, do you know about any mistakes or misconceptions in career starters?
Maybe one thing, because we talked about the fun part of being a technical artist, but there is also this a little more dark, like less shiny and less fun, at least for some people, part, because being a technical art is also being in a support role of sorts, as people ask you questions. Hey, I did this and it doesn't work, or I did this and that and now my Maya is hanging, and you have to go and help them out. The bigger the team you're working on, the more of that part your job will be. So it's kind of like you working in customer support. You have to have like communication skills and general like space in your head to do that, and you'll be doing that a lot, and especially at the very and then you dealing with optimizations, which is a tedious, long 2-year process in a big project that you will mostly click the delete button to some extent. So there's also that. So don't get discouraged if you join a big studio at their last year or last half a year of game production, because it will be just grind. It will just be Jira bugs, solving problems stuff, and just bringing up the FPS counter. So don't get discouraged. It gets funner. You'll get to the fun parts.
Would you say the fun part is rather the beginning of the development, the middle, or the end?
The beginning, always when like starting, and even if you like move to production, still at the start you make the most like groundwork. So like the biggest features, the most pronounced stuff, the stuff that you can see usually, like okay, this I'm really having an impact. And then like later on you're just a glorified janitor, as we call it. So you just have to deal with that, have that in mind, that will be also a part of your job.
Süleyman, do you have any mistakes or misconceptions to share that you noticed in career starters?
Not much actually, but all the ones covered by Aleksandra and Marvin. But I guess the only thing I say is be ready to dive into the technical side more, because when you get into the project, most of the problems you will have you will have with the technical side, not the art side, and you will be dealing with the bugs and the problems and how to visualize that and how to make this art more performance, as Marvin gave an example from tree placing in the background. Yes, you can do it with the art side, but technical side comes how to do it with a good performance. So yeah, you have to be ready to be more nerd than cool artist person.
Thank you. I have a question from the chat, which is fitting because Aleksandra just said, yeah, you have to do a lot, you're a janitor. So the person wants to know that like each of you said that you're working with all the departments all the time. How do you avoid getting overloaded with tasks? Maybe Aleksandra can start.
Talk to your producer about it. Always be in contact with your producer. If you have a good producer that doesn't follow the rule of let's get 9 women and they're gonna give a birth to a kid in 1 month, then you're in good hands. Then you can just talk like, look, I can't do all of this, and we just need to spread the work. We have to change goals for the milestone, for example, or we just look, I need help. I need another tech artist. Can we make that happen? That's totally normal. But yeah, it's also if you're working with more than one TA in the team, in bigger companies that usually is a case, you just spread the work between each other. You just have like a big meeting once, and you just see, okay, who has the most load, who can take it from you. So that's also part of production and management, really.
Marvin, I saw that you unmuted yourself at that question.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with Aleksandra because it is really, really important to speak up once you notice these issues. And like she said, a good producer will help you to distribute the work, because oftentimes it happens that even work that other people could do as well is thrown onto the pile of the tech artists just because they can do everything. And so it's really important to then be clear and say, no, this is something that someone else can do, and I need to focus on these tasks because they are what is most important right now. And then obviously, if you are the only tech artist on the team, this can be very exhausting. So it's really important to make sure that if you feel like the work is crushing you, that you speak up and say, okay, hey, I need help. We need to get another one on the team, because I think every tech artist knows that there's just so much stuff to do all the time at every stage of production that there's never really a time where you just sit around twiddling your thumbs, basically.
Süleyman, do you agree? Do you never twiddle your thumbs?
Mostly yes. All yes, not mostly. But also, like, yes, I'm strong, but strong enough to know my limits. So I always set realistic deadlines. And when I have so much workload, it's like, as they mentioned, very vital to communicate with your team or with your lead to say, hey, it's too much and I'm overwhelmed. And when necessary times, just like give it a break or something. Everyone will be understanding in the end. That matters. Your life, your health, mental health, what matters.
Absolutely, I agree, and that's on every job field. So is there anything you wish you had you yourself had known before entering the industry, or when you were a career starter, Süleyman?
Yeah, there is so much to know that I wish it would be like much better, but I also enjoy like learning them on the way. So I have no complaints there. Yeah, pretty open answer, but that it is.
Perfectly fine. Marvin.
Yeah. When I think about how I got into the industry, it's not really something that I would change, because I come from an artist background and then was a 3D artist first. But one thing that I could see would cause some issues if you're not had anything to do with 3D art and then just say, okay, I want to become a tech artist now, because I think it's true for us, and I think it's also true for most of tech artists out there. They all started as 3D artists or game artists. So it is really the path that you need to take, spending time of that first and not making the mistake of saying, okay, I will now focus on all the technical parts of being a tech artist, and the art stuff that will come later, because it is really the foundation of all that. Because most of the problems that you're trying to solve are technical, yes, but they are a technical source of all the art problems that you need to solve. So this is really something where I would say to myself, never skip the art part, which I think is very important.
Aleksandra, you also didn't skip the art part. Was there anything you yourself would have liked to know before starting on the job?
Don't overwork yourself. Don't work 12 hours a day for 2 years. I did that and I ended up with a burnout and on a sick leave for 3 months. Don't do that. People will not respect you more for sitting for 12 hours. You will be paid more depending on the country where you're working in, but probably not. And you'll just ruin yourself. And if you're gonna do a good job, you can do a good job in 8 hours. And you're gonna be promoted exactly the same time. Don't go an American way of like grind and work first and all of that. Like we're past that in the industry. I feel like, except if you're in States, if you're working for Rockstar and Riot and all of those. But in Europe, like we know better now. So don't do it. Don't do it to yourself. Just 8 hours, clock out, enjoy your life. Come back, be awesome, and on repeat.
So glad you're feeling better. Yeah, you can 100% sign that. your like what you said, it's super important to be careful with yourself, with your body, with your mind, even though you are in an industry where you basically enjoy working. Because I know a lot of people who ask me, like, you work in the games industry, oh my god, that sounds like a dream. Yeah, but a dream lets you overwork yourself from time to time because your whole heart is in it. So is there anything else you would like to tell your like our audience about the job or the field of expertise before I pass over to Anna Süleyman? So is there anything you want to tell the audience we have right now, like to end this blog of questions about this job or about this field that we didn't touch yet?
We covered the good area, but what I say is it's always fun to work on games. It's very exciting. Yes, sometimes, especially on the release days, it's too much work, so excited. Sometimes we work extra, but that doesn't always happens. But when that happens, it's most of the time very exciting because you make the game, players will play it, and they will give some reviews and comments, and it feels so good to see all the positive feedbacks and stuff, and it keeps me alive to like seeing my work will be appreciated by others. So like it's fun.
Marvin, what do you think? What do you want to tell the audience?
Yeah, one thing that is important for me personally, because that was my path into the industry as well, is that of course, even if your end goal is games, maybe try not to focus too hard on games, because there are other ways to get into the industry apart from getting out of college or your program basically and immediately jumping into the next gaming studio. Because for me, like I said, I was starting as a freelance 3D artist, and so I did models for everything from little commercials to films to get to learn this part of the job. And then once I joined a small production company, we would start working with VR. So you can then, even if it's not maybe games, but the VR is more suited for product advertisement or maybe serious games, like simulations and stuff, it still gives you the experience needed to be a technical artist. And so look outside of the games industry as well to gain experience, because it will be much easier for you then if you have this experience and can showcase it to become a part of the games industry.
Aleksandra, what would you like to tell the audience?
Maybe don't shun job offers if they're not working on the platform you work at the end, like you work to work on. So I worked on pretty much every platform from VR to mobile to consoles, and you'll learn very different things on each of those. So it will be a great learning experience no matter of which platform you'll be working on. So don't make it like your most biggest thing that I need to work on big games on consoles. Like you're gonna learn some cool stuff too.
Thank you. Anna, I think you still have some questions left.
Yes, thank you so much. We're talking about entry and career start and how to build up your portfolio. Do you have any open positions in your department at the moment? Can you give us a hint to, are there open positions at your company, or if there are not, where to look as an entry searcher? So if you don't have any open positions, that's fine. It's a tough industry right now.
Yeah, what I can maybe say to that is we recently had open positions. They have now been filled. But one important tip that I would give is, even if there's not an open position right now, it does not hurt to just send in your application, letting them know that you are available, showing your awesome portfolio. Because if you really have what it takes, then they might keep your application, put it on into a talent pool, and then later on they can draw from it. So even if it doesn't work out right away, you still get the chance that you would not have gotten if you don't even apply. So just give it a shot, apply to the places you want to work at, and see if it works out.
Yeah, thanks so much for the tip. There just popped up a question from the chat, like from your experience, what is the interviewing process like for tech art? Is there something you can tell from your experience? Maybe Aleksandra, you can tell what can you expect if you get an interview for a job?
So yeah, it's usually multi-tiered, a multi-step process. It's usually, and it's never one talk. It's usually 2 to 3. Sometimes people will ask you to perform a test, an art test. I would say that usually for juniors, it's less popular for seniors. That will be given like some time for you, probably 3 to 5 days usually, and yeah, just do your best on those tests. And on the technical side, we always ask you like technical questions. Like classics are like, what's the dot product? What's a draw call? What's the HDR? Or the color spaces? Just simple, very basic questions. We don't do like Google questions or in any studio that I worked in. The one thing that happened that was unusual, it was that's once I was asked to do a test on site. I was given an hour. I had to do something in an hour with other candidates, and that was my first job actually in CD Projekt. So that can happen to you. They'll have like a bit of a weird recruitment process, but usually it's just a task for you to do at home. And of course, you can Google and whatnot. So that's a bit less stressful. So yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other tips for going into an interview or experiences that you can share?
Sure. For me, especially since the time that I was on the other side of interviews as well, one thing that I can give as a tip is that it is always better if we don't have to pull everything out of you, pull it out of your nose, basically. So it really makes a good impression if you can passionately talk about what you did and what you are doing, because we then don't even have to ask you so many questions, and you can present yourself in the best light and tell us what you are passionate about and what you are like to work on, and can maybe even show your amazing work that you did.
Thanks. That was some great tips. Süleyman, can you add something or want to add something?
Yeah, I mean, in the end, you will be working with those people, so you have to, yes, of course, you have to impress them with the technical side, but also you have to impress them as their colleague. You have to be a positive person, and you have to be ready to take some feedbacks. And as Marvin mentioned, you have to show your passionate side of the job, because nobody wants to work with someone who doesn't like their job. Nobody wants to work with someone who doesn't even smile. So it's very important to like be positive and stay positive and give it to the others and spread it. Yeah.
Yeah. These are some great tips for interviews in general. Yes, thank you. Were some questions in the chat popping up because from the perspective of becoming a technical artist, is it necessary to do 3D art, to do 3D art understanding, or to do a course, or to do 3D in any form as a technical artist? Is this a yes from all of you? Because the questions popped up a few times from people who don't come from 3D and want to know, is it needed as a technical artist? Do you say yes?
For me, it's a hard yes if you want to work on 3D games. If you do not want to work on 3D games, it's still yes, because you will learn a bunch of game development from 3D art, and most of the 2D games that you see nowadays still use some form of 3D in their pipeline. So it is really hard to not have these foundations and then go into technical art. So I would definitely recommend you take your time and explore these areas and explore them thoroughly, so you get all the knowledge that is required to be a technical artist.
Yeah. To add that, even though it depends on the companies, it's always good to have basic knowledge of each different types of art. And of course, in the beginning, you might see that it's not necessary to learn 3D, but I will make sure that at some point you will use it in your one of your projects for sure, because it's very essential to know 3D. And you can, even though creating shaders, you will apply some 3D knowledge to that.
And it's a yes from you, Aleksandra, as well.
Yeah, definitely, because you'll always know more about what vertices are, how they've been processed in the GPU. That's stuff you need to know. You need to know what's vertex colors, because that's what you're gonna use, and you're gonna do shaders that are using vertex colors. Then they have to know how to do that. And then if you want to do rigging, then of course you need to know 3D first, because then you have to know how the topology has to look like for knees and all other bendy parts. So definitely that's something that you should do. You don't have to be like, I don't know, riot type, tier 3D artist. You just need to know how to create a simple asset, and then this way you'll learn a lot about games as well, because you'll know what the vertices are, what's the difference between material and a shader, because there's a big difference, and so on and so forth. And you're gonna bring something from a DCC package like a Blender and Maya to the game engine, which is also not so straightforward, and can be met with a lot of bumps. So definitely, you don't have to be great at it. You don't have to have an amazing 3D portfolio, but you have to be able to do some 3D at least.
Okay, thank you. That's a good understanding now to how to that it is necessary to understand it and to work in that field. I have a fun question for you, for somebody who says he or she is joining late into the field. If you had worked as a 3D artist and did some time away in a different department, and now you are 35, that's so very old. Whoever wrote that, that's not old. Is there room for people who come late into the game, or who had experiences before and now they want to start again, because the industry is changing so fast? Is there still room for people who are old with 35, or what is your experience like? Can you go into the industry with this kind of life experience and work experience?
I
Marvin?
can
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry.
I can say something about it. Every year tools are changing. How we do the things are changing and developing all the time. So we get to refresh ourselves every year, or whenever something new comes up with the better performance. So it's never late to join to the party, because with you also we learn something new and study the similar things, because I mean, it's always good to have base knowledge, but everyone is refreshing their knowledge, and it's never late to join this.
Yeah. What I really, or one good example for this is for the Unreal Engine, it would be Lumen, the new crazy lighting features that just came out now. I would say already 2 years ago, but it's still a big catch-up game for everyone to really get to know the systems and how to work with them. So yeah, it has already been said, the tools are constantly changing, but if you have been away from the industry, or you want to join at a later point, it is also important to brush up on your skills and make sure that you take some time to get to know what the current meta is, so to say, about how things are done. And even if you're not being perfect at all of them, it is important to at least know about these processes and how they could affect the game development.
Yeah, thanks so much. Aleksandra, do you have anything to add from your point of view?
35 is not old. I'm 30.
Yes.
Excuse me. So that's one thing. And yeah, like industry will always take you back. If you had, especially if you had like a few years back, open arms always, because what industry is looking for is experienced people. And even if you have to go back, just do some nice portfolio, brush up your skills, just like Marvin said, and just watch some streams from Unreal Engine. Just subscribe to them. Watch every Monday. I think they go live with their new updates, and enjoy.
I think that's so great. We are now coming to the end of our discussion round. It's a nice thing to say. Enjoy what you are working on. So thank you all for being part of this and for sharing your insights and your experiences and for giving so many tips. And now, as we talked about this, now we want to switch professions and want to dive more into technical artists ourselves. Thank you. That there were so many great tips. We learned so much. Thank you for being part of this. And if you still have some questions left from the chat that we couldn't answer, or were too complicated to answer right now, you can join our Discord. I think my colleague already mentioned it in the chat, but feel free to come to our Gamecity Discord. We are a nice community there, and as our panel members said, ask questions, be really curious about everything, and don't hesitate to ask questions. And yeah, thanks so much for being part of this event. And that's it for us. We will keep you updated on the next events on our channels. But for now, thanks so much, Süleyman, Marvin, Aleksandra, for being part. It was a pleasure for us. So have a nice evening and enjoy the night and enjoy working in the games industry. So bye, everyone.
Bye bye.